This week on the Mindful Men podcast.
Organizational psychology, in its simplest, conception or simplest understanding of it, is simply taking psychological science and applying it within the organizational context, within organizations and workplaces. And so that's what I say I do is I take psychology and apply it in the workplace, and I help leaders get the most out of their people in the workplace, right? And help their people get the most out of work in their life. So you can describe organizational psychology in many different ways. I think one of the ones that a lot of people like is Adam Grant, who is kind of the many of your listeners would know is the poster child of organizational psychology around the world these days. But he describes organizational psychology as the profession that studies how to make work not suck, which I think kind of resonates with a lot of people. And so really, as a psychologist in general, you are trained as in what we call the scientist practitioner model. So you're trained to be a scientist and apply the scientific method to whatever the field of focus for you. So for us, it's workplaces and in organizations. We're taking psychological science. We're looking at how do we apply it in the workplace, and we're studying this world of work and how can we make it better experience for staff, leaders more effective in their role, and how do we increase performance and the outcomes for everyone. And the thing to be aware of is if we look at psychology itself as a broader profession, there is so much within that. Even just today, we've kind of spoken about the organizational psychology piece, the sports psychology piece, the clinical psychology piece, which relates to the therapy that you're doing. There's educational and development psychology. There is community psychology, which is kind of looking at more social and large communities. I know I've missed forensic psychology. I do a bit of work with the psychologists with Queensland Corrections that focus on the criminal element of the community, I guess. So there's a really broad range of psychological practices, or what we call in the field areas of expertise, areas of endorsed practice. And so, as you mentioned right at the beginning, I'm an endorsed organizational psychologist, which means I've specialized in organizational psychology. But then within organizational psychology itself, that's really broad as well. We've got the recruitment and selection side of things, the assessment and personality side of, we've got ergonomics and work design is in there. We've got, the culture piece and teams. We've got, the whole area of psychosocial hazards is a really big one at the moment, given the change of legislation that came in last year. There's a really broad range of areas to focus on within organizational psychology. For me, I say that I focus on strategy, leaders and teams, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'm using psychology in a way that helps leaders and their teams perform at their peak and pursue their potential. And I challenge mindsets, influence culture, and empower people. Like that's kind of what I do. And it's really around helping leaders define and implement strategy, helping teams to become, the high performance team and operate better and have great culture, and then the leader development. So whether that's leadership skills training, whether that's individual one-on-one coaching, that space. So that's kind of a bit of an overview of organizational psychology and where I fit.
Yeah, it's so broad and so dynamic as well. And I think everything we talk about these days often has a spectrum. The spectrum seems to be the buzzword at the moment, and they all interplay with each other as well. So what you're doing in HR compared to culture, compared to values, compared to KPIs, team dynamics and recruitment, it all interplays with each other. They're not isolated silos, even though we create silos in organizations to deal with those specific issues as well. I'm interested, like from your experience, both in the military, but also doing what you do now with organizations, why do workplaces suck? Like, what's the key trends or themes that you see when you walk into a business and going, hey, yeah, that sucks. Like, let's try and work on that. What do you see as the trends?
I think, first of all, we've got to recognize that workplaces are work, right? And work means we have to work. And so often that means there's a level of effort that's required. It can be hard, right? In order to get anything meaningful done, there needs to be a level of hardship or exertion or something, that investment that's made in order to get the result at the end. Now, true in life for all of us, and that's why we set goals and the growth that happens along the journey to achieving the goals that often provides meaning or a sense of meaning for a lot of people in life. When we come to the workplace and organizations, it's that same principle, but at a collective level. What we are doing with any business or organization is we're saying, okay, cool, there's a need and we need to work towards meeting that need. And that's why we come together, because we can achieve more together. But we've still got to do the work in order to meet the need, right? It's really interesting. I was having a coaching conversation just this morning, speaking to a CEO about this. And there's a lot that's said at the moment around the younger generations coming through, and they're not as resilient as other generations and very much entitled and all that sort of stuff. And I think, well, to a degree, the reality is they've got a different set of expectations. And a lot of the challenges in the intergenerational leadership comes down to those expectations not being met on either side. And when you think about the younger generation coming through, we've done a whole lot of work, particularly led by my profession, right, to understand work, to understand workplaces, to understand leadership, and to identify what is a good workplace. What is a workplace that doesn't suck? What is good leadership, and how to look like? And so the younger generations coming up they've grown up being exposed to the Simon Sineks of the world, the Brene Browns, the Adam Grants, all these people that are really kind of promoting, hey, here's really good workplace practice. Here's what you need to do in order to have a great workplace. And so these younger generations are coming through expecting, because all this information's out in the world, that their workplace is going to implement that, or that's going to be their experience. But the reality is that, one, not every workplace is able to do a lot of the things that are spoken about. And even if they do, it doesn't take away the hardship or doing hard work that is in a workplace. And so some of the expectations of younger generations are unrealistic. Now, we look at the older generations, and they've come through workplaces and generations and done work for decades where none of that information was available to them. Good leadership practice wasn't role model to them, and they probably haven't been trained in what those good leadership practices are. And so they create workplaces and environments that don't have any of that. Not because they're intending to, but because they, again, have never had a role model. They've never experienced it. So they don't know how to create a workplace that doesn't suck, if we want to use that kind of language. And so, their expectation of the younger generations is often that they would be as resilient as they were, that they will kind of suck it up and, do what they had to do in order to work and progress in their career. Whereas the younger generations have a very different set of expectations based on everything that they've been exposed to. And so what we often find is we've got these differing expectations that are unmet on both sides, and that causes conflict and frustration and all sorts of things. And what I would say is that a workplace that doesn't suck is probably where the leaders' expectations are met by the staff and the staff expectations are met by the leaders. And, both sides are taking responsibility and ownership for looking out for one, meeting the expectations of the other, and for doing what is necessary in order to, commit to the organization's goals, whatever they are. So people are investing and they've got skin in the game. They're owning the organization, both its results and its experience. And they're communicating, they're meeting from a leadership perspective and a staff perspective regularly, and engaging in a way that is really healthy and that promotes a great experience for everybody, and also produces the results that are desired.